Greetings, and welcome to Arcana Analysis, where we invite you into the Velvet Room to unlock the secrets of the Arcanum and the bonds they encompass. On this episode of Arcana Analysis, we'll be reveling in the Fortune Arcana. Fortune is the 10th major arcana, following the Hermit and preceding Strength. In a tarot reading, the Wheel of Fortune card may be readily welcome or incredibly feared, as it brings with it unpredictable change. There is a certain instability to the card, and the lively, varied nature of the wheel itself in many depictions drives this point. There are many possible ways the future may change, and sometimes all you can do is spin the wheel and see what life brings you. It may be positive or negative, large or small, but one thing is always certain. Things won't remain the same for too long. While fortune can be a fearsome messenger of fate, it reminds us of two important lessons. First, we must recognize that nothing can stay the same forever. As we learn and grow, our world will change, and we must embrace this. Second, we should count our blessings and never get too comfortable. Many things are out of our control, both good and bad, and we'll inevitably have to deal with unpredictable changes throughout our lifetime. Within the Persona series, characters assigned to the Fortune Arcana are often subject to circumstances that they view as immutable and inescapable. They begin their journey crushed under the weight of their fate, and see themselves as helpless to escape it. However, as they grow and change, they find that more is in their hands than they initially saw, and while they cannot change their starting point, they can adjust their actions to either take hold of the fate they create for themselves, or rise to meet the one they see before them. Personas of the Fortune Arcana excel in wind magic, a nod to the common poetic idea that fate and luck are wind, an intangible, immaterial force that is sometimes with us and sometimes against us. Fittingly, they take the form of deities tied to fate or creatures of omen.
The first member of the Fortune Arcana in Persona 3 is Keisuke Hiraga, a student at Gekkoukan High and the leader of either the art, music, or photography club, depending on which the protagonist joins. He is an incredibly kind, friendly, and generous young man whose skills go far beyond the arts. Keisuke's father is a doctor, one who wants nothing more than for his son to follow in his footsteps. All of this pressure to study medicine has caused quite the rift to grow between father and son, with Keisuke's sights set firmly on the arts. Despite this fact, the young student is quite a skilled caretaker, often playing doctor whenever certain students need medical help. Deep down, Keisuke enjoys helping others, yet he disregards these feelings to spite his father. Later in the link, there is an art contest that the club may enter, and Keisuke's submission ends up making it to the finals. Feeling confident in his ability to win, Keisuke strikes up a deal with his father. If he places well in the contest, he can pursue any career he wants in the future, and if he loses, he'll accept his father's wishes and study medicine. As expected, the young artist places well in the contest and wins the bet with his father. Alongside this personal victory, Keisuke also wins an opportunity to study abroad in whichever art form he is most passionate about. Surprisingly, his father is in full support of this notion, going so far as to plan the entire trip on Keisuke's behalf. This causes another bout of indecision from the young man, proving that it was never about studying medicine or pursuing the arts. Rather, it was his father's domineering attitude towards his life that made Keisuke want to pursue new ventures. After much deliberation, he inevitably decides to study abroad, with the protagonist coming along to see him off. On the way to the train station, however, they witness two elderly people collapse on the ground, both in terrible condition. Immediately springing into action, Keisuke manages to keep the two of them alive long enough for the paramedics to arrive, which inspires him to abandon his plans to study abroad. He resolves to become a doctor, not for his father's sake, but because he honestly wants to help people and save lives. Keisuke's plight is one about freedom and agency in the face of a predetermined future. Even though he honestly wanted to become a doctor even at the beginning of this link, he turned his back to that path because he felt as though he had no control. Yet, at the very end of this arc, the boy finds himself right back where he started. As a member of the Fortune Arcana, Keisuke shows us that we all have control over our fate, even when the future seems predetermined.
In Persona 3 Portable, Yoji Mochizuki holds the Fortune Arcana through his social link. He initially arrives as another normal, albeit popular transfer student. He is charismatic, flirtatious, and lively, quickly making many friends, including Junpei, who he regularly engages in hijinks with. He can be mischievous and downright perverted at times, but through his social link, we see a much softer and compassionate side to him. Yoji spends only a short time in ignorant bliss before gaining awareness of his strange situation and beginning to grapple with the memories he lacks. As this continues, he doubts his place in the world more and more, and the protagonist and their friends in Cease become increasingly dear to him. A slow dread creeps into his heart, and before he comes to realize the truth of his existence, he already senses a dismal fate befalling him and those he loves. Inevitably, Yoji comes to realize that he is the embodiment of death, and that he was sealed inside the protagonist by Aigis 10 years ago. This awakened in Death a new understanding of humanity, and a longing to be a part of it. This resulted in Yoji Mochizuki. However, his short existence is doomed to end. He is the harbinger of Nyx, a vital cog in the destruction of the world. Upon realizing this, Yoji immediately succumbs to his horrific fate, his personality dissolving into little more than depression and passivity. However, the memories of joy he felt as a human have not been lost, and Yoji's genuine love for his friends brings him to rebel against the fate laid out for him. Rather than fully submit to bringing a dreadful end to the world he loves, Yoji offers them a way out. They must kill him. By killing him before he can summon Nyx, they will delay the fall and lose all their memories of the Dark Hour. This would allow the protagonist and the rest of Cease to live out their remaining days in the same ignorance Yoji began in. They would forget their death was inevitable, and they could end their lives happily. However, the protagonist refuses, despite Yoji's insistence. Recognizing their resolve, he aims to help out in the only way he can before disappearing. He offers them what little advice he can about Nyx and the fall before wishing them luck in the coming year and ceasing to exist. As Death and the Nyx avatar, Yoji embodies much of the core idea of Persona's Fortune Arcana. He is a terrible, inevitable fate, but also something to be fought against and overcome. And ultimately, this is what the protagonist does. Yoji as the Nyx avatar is defeated, and the protagonist seals away Nyx herself, thereby turning fate's cruel hand and saving the world from the death laid out for it. In Persona 4, Naoto Shirogane is the final member to join the investigation squad and the holder of the Fortune Arcana. Naoto actually starts off in soft opposition to the protagonist and company. Being the famous detective prince, she is aligned with the Inaba Police Department, and believes that the investigation team has no place in solving the murder case. In these small interactions, we see that Naoto is determined to maintain a curt and proper persona. She's a buzzkill and is highly critical of the team. This demeanor is recontextualized when she acts as bait and gets thrown into the Midnight Channel. Through confrontation with her shadow, Naoto's gender is revealed alongside her reasons for masquerading as a boy in the first place. Sexism and hierarchy run rampant in police jobs. No matter how brilliant and accomplished she may be, Naoto's co-workers will always look down on and belittle her. For this reason, she works to alter herself. First, she casts off anything that others might label frivolous or silly, bringing an unhealthy level of devotion to her work in order to prove how serious she is. Second, she rejects her gender, not because she feels it is wrong, but because she sees it as a point of weakness and a burden. Naoto has resolved to becoming something she's not, and in the process, she has accepted the fate laid out for her. Rejecting herself is not a rebellion against those wicked powers that bind her. Rather, it was a submission to their demands, a placation. Accepting her shadow is emblematic of accepting her true identity. But Naoto remains guarded and in conflict with herself even after defeating her shadow. This is in part because she still sees the social pressures that caused her to reject herself in the first place as a ruling power she must work around, rather than overcome. The time she spends with the investigation team slowly eases her into her more natural self. But due to the ongoing murder case, Naoto still feels the need to play the role of detective prince. What really helps her drop the facade is her social link with the protagonist. Their story begins when the protagonist is tasked with delivering a letter to Naoto, which quickly spirals into a series of riddles laid out by a phantom thief who broke into the Shirogane manor and stole some of Naoto's past possessions. While she initially sees these trials as frivolous distraction, the protagonist pushes her to figure out what it all means, eventually leading her to collect detective tools she'd made in her youth, and recover the pure love she had for sleuthing that drove her to become a detective in the first place. The whole game turns out to have been a ruse put on by her grandfather, who had watched Naoto become a workaholic who constantly denied herself any enjoyment in life and twisted her own identity to fit the mold of who the world thought a detective ought to be. By allowing herself to relax, have fun, and embrace her gender, Naoto realizes that she is the detective prince, regardless of her personality and passions. She may be judged and looked down upon, but this doesn't negate her achievements and skill. She will carry on her work as herself, not a mask made to placate the masses. Naoto's starting persona, Sukuna Hikona, takes on a very polished and straightforward appearance, wearing a blue boy's uniform. In mythology, Sukuna Hikona deters disease, which relates to the key role Naoto plays in lifting the curse from Inaba, one that often has strong themes of illness. This is also in part why Naoto arranges doctor's appointments for the investigation team in the late game. Her evolved persona, Yamato Takeru, references a prince and eventually emperor of Japan. This is a direct nod to her role as detective prince, as well as her proper nature, heritage, and the inner nobility she displays when embracing her sheer love of sleuthing to help people. Her ultimate persona, Yamato Sameiragi, is not named for any particular figure. Instead, it is simply an epithet for emperors. This symbolizes Naoto's complete detachment from her previous facade. Her pride is no longer at the whims of external judges. By embracing herself and not allowing the verdict of others to reflect on her belief in her abilities, Naoto has broken free from fate and carved a role that is fully her own.
The bearer of the Fortune Arcana in Persona 5 is Chihaya Mifune, a fortune teller who operates in Shinjuku. Her powers of divination are incredibly strong and undeniably real, causing her to become rather stubborn with regards to her predictions. To her, fate is not malleable, and any negative outcomes she predicts are fated to happen, regardless of her meddling. This particularly bleak outlook on her foresight was born from trauma in her youth. During her time as a seer in a small country town, Chihaya would predict natural disasters before they would arrive, and many blamed her for the misfortune that had befallen the village, going so far as to burn her house down. She escaped to Tokyo not too long after that, where she was found by Yuichi Fukurai, the head of a group called the Assembly of Divine Power. The ADP saw potential in the young Chihaya, so they accepted her into their ranks. In truth, the Assembly of Divine Power is nothing more than an elaborate ruse, a group of con artists hoping to take advantage of desperate individuals. Chihaya sees this every day, as she is forced to sell holy stones to her customers in an attempt to protect them from misfortune. She knows full well that these stones have no divine power and that she is effectively extorting the desperate, yet she does not leave the assembly. Her reasoning is simple. Chihaya has read her own fortune and seen that she has no possibility of escape. Thus, she submits to her fate. Yet time and time again, the protagonist manages to change fate, altering the lives of her customers for the better. It is through these acts of goodwill that Chihaya sees that fate is malleable, and that she can change her life for the better as well. The Phantom Thieves manage to reform the ringleader of the ADP, freeing Chihaya and her customers from their debts. The seer also learns to stand up for what she believes in, no longer bound by fate. Chihaya's role as a fortune teller does align well with her given arcana, but her outlook on fate overall is what truly makes her an icon of fortune. Despite her power to divine the future, Chihaya learns that nothing is truly set in stone, that even the most bleak of scenarios can be avoided by simply fighting for what you believe. Fate, simply put, is what you make of it.
That concludes our examination of the Fortune Arcana. Those who embody this arcana may find themselves at odds with fate, lacking the agency to seize their own destiny. However, fortune is much more than the whims of fate. It is about the necessity of change. Everyone has the power to change, for better or worse. But so long as that change comes from within, then even something as grand as fate can be bent to your will. We hope you've enjoyed your stay with us in the Velvet Room, and we look forward to seeing you again. Until then, we bid you adieu.